The game. Where's Waldo? Where's Tyler? Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhare Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrāja Kacharya, Ashtotara Shatashi, Shrimad Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrāja Kacharya, Ashtotara Shatashi, Shrimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 5, the creative impetus, Chapter 25, the glories of Lord Ananta. This is a summary. In this chapter, Shukadeva Goswami describes Ananta, the source of Lord Shiva. Lord Ananta, whose body is completely spiritual, resides at the root of the planet Patala. He always lives in the core of Lord Shiva's heart, and he helps him destroy the universe. Ananta instructs Lord Shiva how to destroy the cosmos, and thus he is sometimes called Tamasi, or one who is in the mode of darkness. He is the original deity of material consciousness, and because he attracts all living entities, he is sometimes known as Sankarshana. The entire material world is situated on the hoods of Lord Sankarshana. From his forehead, he transmits to Lord Shiva the power to destroy this material world. Because Lord Sankarshana is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, many devotees offer him prayers. And in the planetary system of Patala, all the suras, asuras, gandharvas, vidyadharas, and learned sages offer him their respectful obeisances. The Lord talks with them in a sweet voice. His bodily construction is completely spiritual and very, very beautiful. Anyone who hears about him from a proper spiritual master becomes free from all material conceptions of life. The entire material energy is working according to the plans of Anantadev. Therefore, we should regard him as the root cause of the material creation. There's no end to his strength, and no one can fully describe him, even with countless mouths. Therefore he is called Ananta, unlimited. Being very merciful toward all living entities, he has exhibited his spiritual body. Shukadeva Goswami describes the glories of Anantadev to Maharaj Parikshit in this way. So text 1. Shri Shukavacha tasya mula desha trimashad yojana sahasrantara asteya vaikala Bhagavatas tamasi samakya ananta iti satvatiya drishta drishayo Sankarshanam ahaṁ iti yabit mana lakshanam yam Sankarshanam iti akshate. So translation, commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said to Maharaj Parikshit, "My dear king, approximately 240,000 miles beneath the planet Patala lives another incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the expansion of Lord Vishnu, known as Lord Ananta or Lord Sankarshan." Hey, Govardhan, do you think you could ask Tyler to... Okay. He is always in the transcendental position, but because he is worshipped by Lord Shiva, the deity of Tamagun or darkness, he is sometimes called Tamasi. Lord Ananta is the predominating deity of the material mode of ignorance as well as the false ego of all conditioned souls. When a conditioned living being thinks, "I am the enjoyer and this world is meant to be enjoyed by me," this conception of life is dictated to him by Sankarshan. Thus the mundane conditioned soul thinks himself the Supreme Lord. Purport. There is a class of men akin to Mayavadi philosophers who misinterpret the ahaṁ brahmāsmi and soham Vedic mantras to mean, "I am the Supreme Brahman and I am identical with the Lord." This kind of false conception in which one thinks himself the Supreme Enjoyer is a kind of illusion. It is described elsewhere in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 558, janasya moham ahaṁ mameti. As explained in the above verse, Lord Sankarshan is the predominating deity of this false conception. Krishna confirms this in Bhagavad-gita 15:15. Sarvasya cāhaṁ hṛdi sanniviṣṭo mattaḥ smṛtir jñānam apohanaṁ cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as Sankarshan, and when a demon thinks himself one with the Supreme Lord, the Lord keeps him in that darkness. Although such a demonic living entity is only an insignificant part of the Supreme Lord, he forgets his true position and thinks he is the Supreme Lord. Because this forgetfulness is created by Sankarshan, he is sometimes called Tamasi. The name Tamasi does not indicate that he has a material body. He is always transcendental. But because he is the Supersoul of Lord Shiva, who must perform tamasic activities, Sankarshan is sometimes called Tamasi. Om Ganatamadantasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanamilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Kritavachalam Pangam Langai Tegiram Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditarinam Vancha Kapadrubishcha Kripa Sindhabevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu-Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We are nearing the end of this the fifth canto. This chapter here only has 15 verses, quite a short chapter. And then we'll move on to chapter 26. And chapter 26 is the last chapter of this particular canto. So we almost made it through the fifth canto. And the last chapter is a description of the hellish planets, which, just as the spiritual world, there's great detail given of the spiritual world in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. There's great detail of the heavenly planets given in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. There's great detail of the workings of this particular, we could say, the earthly realms. there's similarly great detail given of the hellish planets, what one does, the particular sinful activities one may perform, and the corresponding hells one may enter. And when Shukadeva Goswami is describing all of these hells in detail, at the very end, Maharaj Parikshit is feeling a lot of pain, because he's saying he's thinking that all of these people have to suffer, and how can they become free? And then this brings us to the 6th canto. And in the 6th canto, there's a discussion being brought up, and then this idea of atonement. Okay, well, the souls could get free from their sinful reactions by atoning. But then it's brought up that, well, this atonement is just like the bathing of an elephant. An elephant goes to bathe, right? Nice nearby river. Elephant bathes. Might be very hot outside. Elephant's trying to cool down. I don't know if an elephant has a conception of actually getting clean or not. Maybe.
Oh yeah, they're very particular.
Oh yeah? Okay. So I guess animals have their own concept of being clean. Right? So whether he's trying to be clean or just trying to cool off, right? He's there bathing, he's got his trunk out, and he's pouring water on his body, having a good time. And then he comes out, or she comes out, and then what do? They roll in the dirt, get dirty again. So the idea is that atonement that's been brought up is just like that. People, they go to church, they go to a mosque, they go to a temple, they go to whatever other religious place where the idea of God is there. And they go to a priest, or they just go to the deity, or they go to the picture. Of course, in mosque, they don't have form, but whatever the concept, they pray. And they say, please, God, forgive me, and whatever words they say. But the idea is, please forgive me. I've sinned. And then they walk out, and they just keep on sinning. So the idea is, it's just like the elephant bathing. It gets clean and then again dirty. So in other words, that is not going to help. That atonement in and of itself, the act of asking forgiveness and being humble and submitting oneself before Krishna or before the spiritual master, before devotee, that's good. But there has to be further steps taken. In other words, one has to become free from the desire to sin. One has to develop the strength to avoid it altogether. And that is, you could say, real atonement. Real atonement is coming to the platform of knowledge or of Krishna consciousness. And how do we come to that platform? By tapasya, by austerity. Right? Sometimes people think that word tapasya is like a bad word, like a 4-lettered word or something like that. Oh no, tapasya. But it's important, and it's actually how we come to the platform of Krishna consciousness. We don't come to the platform of Krishna consciousness without tapasya. Therefore, the activities in Krishna consciousness that we do, they should be seen in the mood of tapasya and should be performed in the mood of tapasya, like rising early. It's not a big deal, but for some people it is. But it is a bit of a tapasya. It's an austerity to rise early, to follow the 4 regulative principles, to many things. They could be seen as austerity. But this austerity helps us come to the platform of Krishna consciousness in which we can avoid sin or sinful activities, in which we could avoid these hellish regions or planets. And we shouldn't just think the hellish planets are, I mean, they're there, but there's also hellish locations in this world. There's also hellish states of consciousness. I mean, just being in Maya is actually, it's like the hell of Maya. It's actually hellish. So by performing sinful activities, you may say, oh, well, I won't go to hell, Krishna will save me. Yeah, you could think like that. But what about the hell of Maya? It's a hellish state. And devotees could also fall into that. So in this tapasya, in this austerity, it's meant to what do you call that when you cold press? Or it's meant to just squeeze all the selfishness out of us. Just really just squeeze it all out. Just like you put a carrot in the what do you call those? Yeah, juicer or the champion, right? Everybody loves the champion juicer. So you put carrots in, they go in, and then the juice comes out, and then there's the fiber, or like an orange, right? Just so the idea is that the tapasya, the austerity, the difficulties that we accept, which we should be happy to accept. Like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, these difficulties in devotional service, these are actually my great pleasure because I'm taking on difficulties for you, Krishna. So we should take those as our great pleasure and know the ultimate result is that the selfishness will be squeezed out of us, which is good. It's very good. It's because the pure devotees of Krishna, like any pure devotee of Krishna, any pure devotees of Krishna, whether they were nitya siddhas coming from the spiritual world, means the selfishness is not there. They don't have selfishness. They don't live for themselves. They're living for others. Means for the advancement of others in Krishna consciousness. There's many people living for others, but right, people are. Anyways, so you have nitya siddhas, or you have kripa siddhas, those who become spiritually realized or spiritually perfect through special mercy, and then you have sadhana siddhas, those who become spiritually perfect or realized through spiritual practice. So whatever type of devotee you're talking about, whether in those particular categories, the selfishness is not there. They are living for the service of Krishna, they're living for the service of the devotees, they're living for the service of bringing people to Krishna consciousness, just like Srila Prabhupada, perfect example. So the king is asking, how do people become free from these hells? And you have to come to the platform of knowledge. And we have to become free from the desire to sin. Okay, well, how do we become free from that? And then a jamil, the pastime of jamil comes up, which is a description, a glorification of the holy name, which we'll get into soon in the next canto. Yeah. So that's something to look forward to. Jamil was quite a section we're coming. Of course, we have this hellish planets coming up too, so might scare some people. Like one devotee, Tirthamaj was telling me there was one devotee. I think he was part of BBT. I don't know who it was. I forgot, but it was Sura or Prabhu or someone else. I forgot, but he said he went into the BBT office in Los Angeles, and then this devotee had a nice canvas of the hellish planet, like the graphic, the artist, and it's just a scene of hell. You know, nicely framed and canvas. And then Tirtha Maharaj asked, why, usually devotees don't put that up. You know, they put Govinda playing a flute, or they put Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing, different, things like that. So Tirtha Maharaj was, why do you put that up? And then this devotee said, oh, it's a reminder. I just need to, I need to be Krishna conscious. So anyways. So it is hair-raising, if we really think about it, it is hair-raising, the description of the hellish planets that will be in the next chapter. But so today, in this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the different aspects of darkness, or the aspects of illusion, janasya, moho, ahaṁ, mameti. It says from earlier in the 5th canto. Does anyone, younger devotees, remember this phrase? It's from a particular verse, janasya moho ahaṁ mameti. Does anyone remember that? What about Rasika Sindhu? Do you remember that one? Do you remember some of it? You want to repeat? Are you forgetting? Okay. Anyways. So this is, well, you can look it up. It's there also, 558. How about we look it up, 558? Anyone want to do that fast? You have it? Yeah, there's a link there. Javeda Prabhu, yeah, you want to?
I got it.
Okay.
Sastriyam
It's the fastest.
tayo meto hṛdaya grantama. Ato grihachita sutapta vitter janasya moho yamaham nameti.
Want to read the English, please?
Sure. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine.
Yeah. I am this body, and everything in the relation of this body is mine. So that's the problem. It generates illusion, which you could say kills the innocence of religion, it kills the innocence of religious people, it kills the innocence of bhakti. Of course, bhakti can never be killed, but at least for our own purposes. In other words, it completely hijacks one's consciousness, and that they cannot think of anything else. And particularly, it's mentioned here, the attraction between male and female. So, of course, in the material world, this is in many ways a built-in system, right, to keep the world moving. But one should know it for what it is, and not be mistaken that it's something that is supposed to be a lifelong, or what to speak of, life after life, and program. In other words, one may get involved, means a male and a female may get involved in the institution of marriage, varnashram, most do, but that has to be done religiously under the guidance of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam instructions of the spiritual master. But there's also a time in which you could say the shop should be closed. Like, for example, one has children, and then they grow up, and once they're grown, one should be making plans to close shop, but one should close shop means that one should not continue on in family matters, because after children, there's grandchildren. And whatever, I mean, people may have some natural affection for their grandchildren, and I mean, that's normal. But there's there's a healthy affection and there's an unhealthy affection. Unhealthy affection means we're in love with our grandchildren, we're in love with our children, we're in love with our nail polish, we're in love with our saris and our dhotis and our houses and our whatever, dog, and it's all of this love of, but not Krishna. That's unhealthy. But therefore, Rupa Goswami is saying, Yukta Vairagya principle, someone may have children, someone may have grandchildren, someone may have dhotis, someone may have nail polish, I guess, anyway, so it's not gonna get into, one may have all of these things. But they shouldn't lose sight of the real goal of life. They shouldn't lose sight of what their real business should be. Like, for example, Vanaprastha ashram, it's before sannyas, and not necessarily everyone has to take sannyas. To be Vanaprastha and not take sannyas is fine, but there should be some endeavor in that direction. Not that one just continues, like, for example, devotees should engage more in preaching, spreading the message of Krishna consciousness, or engage in sadhana and so on. Not that the grandchildren are here and, okay, great, I'm going to spend all my time with them. You can spend some time, but not all the time. Because if one is just in love with all of these different things, it doesn't really make one any better than those who are praying for these things. Like, for example, people say, oh, you're going to God and you're praying for mundane things. That means you're, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that means you're in love. It's not love of God, it's love of things, it's love of stuff, right? So I could say, Balarama Das, I'm not going to Krishna, and I'm not praying for mundane things, which I don't, by the way. I'm still a rascal and a fool, but I don't pray for mundane things. But if I'm attached, if I'm in love with a bunch of mundane things of this world, it's still a problem. It's still, I am this body and everything in relation to the body is mine. It's still a problem. Okay, I've got past the problem. I don't go to Krishna for any mundane things, but mundane things may come to me, or things of this world may come to me, and if I'm in the mentality of loving them more than I love Krishna, that's a problem. So it's not that any of this is innocent. It's not innocent. Just like one devotee was telling me, he was walking with his guru, and they were walking together, and then they walked past a park, and there was a young mother and a young father and a young child, and they were all polished, right? Handsome, beautiful, good health, just looking great, you know, right out of a Hollywood movie. And then the guru told the disciple, oh, this is envy of Krishna. Because, yes, they're very polished, they're very nice, and they're having a good time in their life, but where's God? Where's Krishna? Maybe he's just completely out of the picture, or somewhere in the back. Like His Holiness Giriraj Swami was saying, sometimes in these Bollywood movies, they make these movies with Krishna in them, and of course they're not following Shastra, so the movie's not according to Shastra. It's just some speculative, mental concoction thing. But saying sometimes Krishna, he's in the movie, but he's like playing he's like a supportive role to the man and woman, everything. So he was saying that people sometimes are like that. You know, Krishna's just my kind of, he's not the center of my life. He's just like a supporting character. You know, I'm kind of like the center of the movie here. You know, so. And in terms of innocence, you know, like a lot of times people, they, like when children walk into the room, right? Everybody kind of, hey, look, there's a child, right? Look at their bright face. Look at their bright eyes. Look at their enthusiasm, right? They're naturally attracted. Because there seems to be a bit of an innocence there. They're not bogged down by lust and anger and greed and all these things. I mean, generally, right? The children aren't like that. You know, just give a little time. And, so when one, if one could become free from these things, and one should, like Srila Prabhupada would mention in his Krishna book, says, my disciples, before they came to Krishna consciousness, they're very dirty looking, unhappy, etc., right? He said now they're very, he said, now they're wearing bright tilak and saffron and they're chanting and dancing and they're just like jubilant peacocks, very attractive. So having these material desires, it actually stifles our natural devotional sentiments that we should have towards Krishna. And that's the problem. And sometimes people start off, you know, bright-eyed and full of enthusiasm, and over time they have a hard time maintaining that. Just like I'm thinking, I remember a few, I mean, whatever, they're good children and whatever, but I remember I'm thinking of a few cases in which there were some devotee children, and I remember, you know, they were young and bright-eyed and full of enthusiasm, not bogged down by any things like whatever, lust, anger, greed, or kind of a social, what do you call, like awkwardness. Or they're just dancing and chanting and looking at the deities and really having a good time, and they're serving prasadam, and you just fast forward a little bit into their teenage years, and they're just like, don't want anything to do with the temple or anything to do with Krishna practically. I mean, of course, at least externally, that's what it looks like. But in other words, they lose that. So as followers of Srila Prabhupada, we have to be careful that we also don't lose that. Because that is what is attractive to people. And he said, well, who cares what's attractive to people? Well, we're supposed to be the representatives of Krishna. We're supposed to be the representatives of Srila Prabhupada. And to represent them means to be able to attract people to become a Hare Krishna, to join our religion. How does that sound? We have to be able to try to attract people. I mean, there has to be an attractive feature, or else why would people want to become a devotee? Oh, you guys are just, I mean, what's so special about you? So we have to be careful that innocence doesn't leave us. Or else there's really no good reason why someone should be attracted. In other words, we're doing a disservice to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So therefore, like on book distribution, as Govardhan Prabhu was mentioning the other day, and as Naveen and Nirada Prabhu was also mentioning, devotees are out on books out on books, right? And you're trying to sell a book to somebody, right? About inner happiness and peace and right, all of these positive things, love of God. And so then Navina Narada was here, and he was saying how people, they're holding the book, they're looking at it, and then they're looking at you, and they're looking at the book, and they're looking at you, and they're looking at the book, and they're wanting it to match up. In other words, you're talking about inner happiness, but I have to see that in you. I have to look into your eyes and see some life. I have to see bright eyes. I have to see something going on there. I can't see a spiritually dead person, or else why would I buy your book? So it's an important principle. And so to get rid of this conception, I am this body and everything in the relation to this body is mine, then that's the process of devotional service. So we engage in the process of a devotional service. And Krishna will help us. Sarvasya cāhaṁ hṛdi sanniviṣṭo. He's saying, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Krishna will give us the remembrance of Him. He will give us that remembrance if we want it. He will give us the knowledge by which we could properly engage in devotional service. He'll give us forgetfulness. He'll give us forgetfulness of this conception, I am this body. That will be forgotten, right? That everything in relation to this body is mine, that will be forgotten. He will give us the ability to forget Maya and all of the entanglement and suffering that is caused by it. Like sometimes they say you get a song stuck in your head, right? We call it an earworm. Is that what they call it? Earworm? Is that what they call it? Yeah, so it's like a song, like repetition, right? So Maya's kind of like that, the record's playing. It's these different conceptions, different thoughts, Mayic thoughts that just keep on repeating. So Krishna will actually, he'll actually remove that. He'll help us forget, which is good. Sometimes, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, forget the past that sleeps and do not dream of the future at all. Focus on the present, and progress thee shall call. So to forget the past means all the Mayic past, it's not that we have to do like a counseling session where we sit down with our mentor and we talk about all the non-Krishna conscious things we've done and how we've... In other words, to dredge it up, we don't have to do that. We can actually forget it. And Krishna will help with that. But it says, for those who think themselves Krishna, then Krishna will keep them in darkness. In other words, if they want that, if they want darkness, then Krishna will keep them there. Because that's what they want. It's up to the living entity. Just like someone may say, oh, the sun's shining outside, right? But if all the doors are closed, all the curtains are closed, they'll say, oh, the sun's not coming in here. I'm not being blessed by the sun, right? I'm not getting the what do you call the nutrition? I don't know what they call it. I don't think so. Right? Vitamin what? D, yeah. I'm not getting the rays of the sun. Well, you have to go outside. So similarly, someone may say, I'm not getting the mercy of Krishna. I'm not getting the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. I'm not getting the mercy of my spiritual master. Well, we have to go outside. We have to go outside, and then in other words, we have to put ourselves in a particular situation in which that mercy will come. So it's fully available. Whereas Prabhupada said one time that I'm distributing my mercy freely. But he talked about one disciple. He said, but Vishnujan, he's taking advantage. So he's putting himself in a particular position in which he'll be able to experience that. So lastly is that it was Srila Prabhupada's, he boarded the Jaladuta. The anniversary was yesterday, and that was quite a journey. And I'll just read a few of these verses that Srila Prabhupada wrote on the board Jaladuta. There's two actually, and I'm not going to read the one that's more quoted because I'm going to read one that's less quoted. You probably know the one that's more quoted by heart by now. Make me dance, make me dance. Why have you brought me here, right? This terrible place. But I'm going to read this one. So it's a prayer to the lotus feet of Krishna. It's short, so. I emphatically say to you, O brothers, you will obtain your good fortune from the Supreme Lord Krishna only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. Srimad Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is very dear to Lord Gauranga, the son of Mother Shachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. He is that great saintly spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna at different places throughout the world. So he's saying that Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his mercy is not bound by where you are located in any place in the world. By his strong desire, the holy name of Lord Gauranga, so by Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's desire, will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world, and all the cities, towns, and villages on the earth, from all the oceans, seas, rivers, and streams, everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. When all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy, the Vaishnav's desire is then fulfilled. So that should be our desire, for all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy. Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I am begging for your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all. If you bestow your power by serving the spiritual master, one attains the absolute truth. One's life becomes successful. If that service is obtained, then one becomes happy and gets your association due to good fortune. So this is a prayer from the 7th canto, 9th chapter, text 28. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires one after another, I was gradually fallen into a blind well full of snakes. Fallen the general populace. But your servant Narada Muni kindly accepted me as his disciple, instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? It's Prahlad to Nrsingadev. O Lord Krishna, you are my eternal companion. Forgetting you, I have suffered the kicks of Maya, birth after birth. If today the chance to meet you occurs again, then I will surely be able to rejoin you. O dear friend, in your company I will experience great joy once again. In the early morning I will wander about the coward pastures and fields, running and frolicking in the many forests of Raj. I will roll on the ground in spiritual ecstasy. Oh, when will that day be mine? Today that remembrance of you came to me in a very nice way. Because I have great longing, I called to you. I am your eternal servant, and therefore I desire your association so much. O Lord Krishna, except for you, there is no other means of success. So that's... So Prabhupada, he boarded Jaladuta, and he had the sinful, miserable living entities in mind, wanting to make them happy. And these are amazing statements here. He's saying that by Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's desire. So the desire of the Charyas is there, and it's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. And it's just a matter if we want to be a instrument in that particular mission. Okay, I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
May I?
Okay, Tyler.
So I had a longer one, but the two quick housekeeping ones based on what you said was...
Housekeeping. Okay.
Yeah, these are just directly related to what you shared.
Okay.
Krishna, the opulence of the Supreme, so I've always, he has these wonderful qualities, and they're pretty straightforward, but remembrance was always one that when I at least shared it with other people, they were like, what do you mean? You're saying that Krishna gives us the ability to forget Maya and our past. To me, that seems like an aspect of that remembrance opulence. He can help you remember what's needed, remember what's not, but I think I don't really know that. Is that how that works? Is that an opulence he's sharing with us, to literally forget Maya or forget our past before we came to Krishna?
Yeah, we forget. Means that at one point we just forget, but then, because there's one thing, like for example, Haridas Thakur was telling this woman who was sent to him by the envious ruler at that time to defame him, means to, because he's a monk, celibate, and this king was saying, oh, go defame him by seducing him. So Haridas Thakur was telling her that, oh, you just sit there and wait, and I'm going to chant, and then I'll fulfill your desire. Of course, he just kept on chanting and chanting and chanting. He was Namacharya Haridas Thakur, so. And then eventually she became purified. She became a great devotee. And he said, yeah, I knew that you came here for this particular reason, but I was just trying to help you. So now renounce all your things and go live a simple life. And she did that. And then he left the village. So in other words, of course, this is Haridas Thakur, but relating it to us, Maya may call, right, in different forms. But you may say, oh, I'm actually busy right now. I have some things to do, some service to Krishna, some service to my spiritual master. I don't have time for this right now. So maybe later, right? But then you just keep on saying that, right? maybe, and it never really happens. You put it off. And then at one particular point, you just don't have a desire for that. So, yeah. So it's one thing to forget, but what if at one point you don't forget? What if you remember and then you're attracted? So yeah, first is forget, but then you may remember, but then you're not attracted. So the problem comes when we remember and we're attracted. Just like Ajama, we're going to be hearing about him. He saw a low-class woman and a man embracing, anyways, the details of, but he became attracted, and he was remembering, but he was attracted, which is a difference from just remembering momentarily and just not being attracted at all. There's a big difference. He couldn't do that. And that was the problem. And then he chased after her. And then he forgot about his spiritual life. And then they were janasya, right? They became I and mine, right? I am this body, and everything is relation is mine. And then he just wasted his whole life. Anyways, we're going to read about that soon.
You elucidated it so well, because all these opulences can be utilized, right? And so remembrance can be utilized. I can remember where I came from, but I have the knowledge now not to do that.
Yes.
So, wow. Okay, and then quickly, Vishnu John, you said that he's taking advantage, but you didn't extrapolate on that. Is it how?
It means he was surrendering to Srila Prabhupada and surrendering to what Prabhupada wants, his desires, and engaging intensely in the devotional service, chanting, right, leading his harinams and this and that.
More so than others? That's why he was.
Well, Prabhupada was making that comment that, yeah, he was making that comment that he was getting the mercy because he was really taken to the devotional service very intensely. So.
I guess it's kind of about balance, but you mentioned the thing about the grandchildren. I know it's not the top issue for everybody here, but some of us.
So you got grandchildren, right? I'm just joking.
So, years ago, as a younger grihasta, there was a quote floating around attributed to Jayadeva Maharaj that ISKCON needs more grandmothers, and we kind of interpreted it in the sense of, like the third generation and like a Krishna culture where devotees are growing up and you actually have parents and grandparents and there's a whole devotional atmosphere that nurtures them and helps them to kind of attain that deeper Krishna consciousness, hopefully. Presumably that was, how we're interpreting it, and then, living in Latra many years and a lot of devotees even older than us, they are grandparents and, observing that. And my close friend Mahatma sometimes was a little worried about the grandchildren thing, you know what I mean? Like, let's get out of town before that happens, because you can get, like you were pointing out nicely, you can get overly, so I guess what's the balance? Like on the one hand, there certainly is a service aspect to that in terms of developing a culture of Krishna consciousness. At the same time, you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, the like we were discussing the other day, it's whatever stage of life we're in and wherever place we're living, it's like a razor's edge. It's just, there's danger. I mean, it's a risky, just living in this world's risky in terms of spiritual life. So, like for example, if one's living in Vrindavan, then there may be, there's risks there. Okay, you commit offenses, you become too, materially motivated, open a business and making money off the dham or whatever, you're cheating people, or it's dangerous. It's like a razor's edge. But okay, you're living in the West, but then there's a lot of, like Prabhupada said, the West is too good for two things, right? Preaching and sense gratification. So might become bewildered by the sense gratification aspect. So it's a razor's edge. So similarly with grandchildren, it's a similar principle that it doesn't have to be a vortex of illusion, but it can be. So it's depending on how the person is viewing it, how the person is seeing, how the person is interacting. So you could say the main point is that we should really endeavor to be Krishna conscious and really take advantage or shelter of the process of devotional service, so that when the temptation does come, then we're strong enough to not fall into it. And it's a temptation. Temptation means it's not just the temptation of evil, right? It's a temptation of good. It's just wholesome. It's good. I'm a grandfather, and look at my beautiful grandson or grandchildren. And it's just a wholesome, in one sense. It could be seen like that. So it's that the temptation has to be overcome by us seriously practicing Krishna consciousness. And there's cases where it's just not overcome. Like you got Bharat Maharaj. He was, Bhava, great devotee. He was so renounced. He was, amazing, right? But then a fawn comes and he's just attracted, like as a pet. And he didn't have any association, right? Sometimes they bring it up that if he had some association, they say, "Hey, Prabhu, you're kind of falling in my here, Prabhu, like what's going on?" So that's also the nice thing about having association, is that they'll tell you. So anyways, I think Bajranath Swami has some. But what do I know?
Yeah, your answer was very good. I would add this, that yes, that's all well and true. We need a whole social structure, we need depth, we need, all of that, sure. But it is an unavoidable fact that the Vedic tradition leans towards renunciation. Like you see these trees that, there's a particular type of pine tree, I guess they're sensitive to the wind, but they're all bent. There's one of them right over here, it's just because the wind predominantly blows this, so they're bent towards that wind. So the Vedic culture is bent towards renunciation. And if that's lost, it stagnates. So we see how responsible Yudhisthira Maharaj, we see how responsible the Pandavas were, but they gave it up. I mean, this is coming from someone who's trying to be a sannyasi. But regardless of what color my cloth, you cannot honestly read the Vedic literature and see they were always supposed to be leaning towards renunciation. I mean, Prabhupada used to say, now nobody even quotes it, 50 by force, about sannyas. Do a Google on it, 50 by force. I mean, it's heavy. But they all knew that, hey, and I'll end here, because Balaram gave a very nice answer, but you can give all good instructions on the ground, but ultimately we have to fly the plane alone. And Prabhupada wrote to me personally, he said, ultimately we have to become our own acharya. Means, hey, we're all alone at the time of death, and how did you prepare for it? So if, sure, take care of your grandchildren, take care of your social responsibility, all that needs to be done. But there's always the leaning towards renunciation, certainly in the last chapter, in the last 20 years of life. I mean, there's a time to do that. There's a time to do all things. But by the time your children are grown up, they can take care of the grandchildren. And there comes a time, because we're all going to be alone at the end, and that's the beauty of Vedic culture. It understands that lean towards renunciation. So I just wanted, it's a layer, it's woven in. It's not exclusive, but it's woven into the culture. And they forget that part. They just, you know. I'm a sannyasi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So.
Hare Krishna, Balaram. Thanks for the nice class. I just had a question about the text. It was saying that, so the living entities, when they, in this mode of forgetfulness, it's this, what is it called? Sankarshana. He takes over, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday, Vaikuntha Prabhu gave a nice talk.
Can you hold a little closer?
Yeah. Ramananda Roy. So is he covered over by Sankarshana, or does
Ramananda Roy?
Yeah.
No. Well, why would you think Ramananda Roy was covered?
Because didn't he become like a great sannyasi of like the Mayavadi philosophy?
Oh, that's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya.
Oh, then yeah, I was completely off then.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was Brihaspati, right? The priest of the demigods, and then he came to this in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime. Now, the backstory of why he was a dry, logician, Mayavadi, I haven't read, and I don't know if Prabhupada, maybe Prabhupada brings it up in the Chaitanya, and I'm just not remembering, but the fact is he was, dry, legit, Mayavad, right? Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Jagannath Puri, and he saw Lord Jagannath, and it was real, he fainted in ecstasy. It wasn't any false thing, but it was ecstasy. And then the guards were actually going to throw him out, and they thought he was just some pretender or something. Then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came, and he came with a little swab, cotton swab. And he saw that Chaitanya, put it by his nose, and he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was breathing very lightly. So then he brought him to his house, this sannyasi, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was elderly, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was young. He was, I think, 24, right? He accepted sannyas, so young, handsome, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was afraid that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going to fall down, going to leave his sannyas. So he actually preached. Yeah. And interpretation. Enthused him with the Mayavad interpretation of Vedanta. So he actually instructed him for many days. So he was sitting there, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, instructing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there's a nice BBT painting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kind of with his eyes up, and Sarvabhauma, And then he wasn't saying anything. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, are you understanding? Because you're not saying anything. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, yes, I'm understanding, but you are obscuring the whole philosophy just as a cloud obscures the sun. And then he went into a whole explanation of the real Vedanta. And anyways, this Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a great devotee. And he would pray later. He said, I was a dry logician, Mayavadi, and I was, tasting the bitter, whatever. Yeah, dry oiled cake, bitter. And but he said, now I'm relishing the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, yeah. Anyways.
I would just add,
Yes.
these great souls come to give us an example. Just like was Arjuna in Maya? How could he be in Maya? He was Krishna's personal associate. But he comes to teach an example. Prabhupada said, we don't even know the right questions, what to speak of the answers. So Arjuna comes to ask the right questions so we can get the right answers. So these great souls, they're coming and playing, they're setting the example of, there's so many. Anyway, I just wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you.
They come to set an example.
Yes, come to set an example. And yeah, like Arjuna, was he in Maya? No, he was placed in that state so the Bhagavad-gita could be spoken. So, yeah. Kalakanta Prabhu's coming tomorrow. He'll be giving the Sunday feast talk. And from, Krishna House, Florida. And he started that. Anyways, he wrote a book. I think it's called, what do you call it? The Rap of God or something? Instead of the wrath of God, the rap of God. So he actually made the whole Bhagavad-gita into a rap. So anyway. Oh, okay. Well, I think we better stop there. Sorry, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. It's just a little late, so.
No problem, Balaram Prabhu. I totally understand. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
They're
Okay.
wondering about this unmanifested voice. He's listening online.
All right. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai.